A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 128th episode of the Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. More than a year ago, in April 2020, when the pandemic had just started and schools had shut down, online education was slowly coming to the fore. We at Notebook felt that it was our responsibility to put together a platform where educators could come and share the various troubles that they were facing, discuss solutions, and overall aid the development of the community. Well, little did we know that more than a year later, I would be inviting you all to the 128th episode. And for this wonderful journey that we've had, I must thank each and every one of you. It is your love and support that keeps us going. We've discussed a wide range of topics. We've discussed extremely curricular topics like the NEP and lesson planning. We've discussed the co-curricular topics like sports and games and extracurricular activities. We've also discussed evolved topics like mental health and social education. Today, we look at a very interesting topic, peer counseling. The image on your screen is something that I hold very dear to my heart. The image pertains to the comic called Calvin and Hobbes, created by Bill Watterson. The comic strip that ran for more than a decade told the story of a young suburban American boy who did not have any real friends, and therefore imagined his soft toy to be his pet tiger and his only one true peer. These two were up to a lot of adventures, and often they would engage in a discourse far beyond their years. They would discuss the universe, human behavior, psychology, and so much more. In a way, this kind of counseling that Calvin received from his pet tiger Hobbes, although imaginary, was what kept Calvin growing and going. On the same note, it was always Hobbes who was up to the most mischievous ideas, getting Calvin into all sorts of trouble. Today, we look at the whole topic of peer counseling from the wider lens of the school education system. And to tell us more about it, our first speaker is somebody who has been in the thick of situations where the greatest friendships are developed. Retd Neeraj Bali, Senamadu, is a founder of Leadership Advisors, a consulting firm focused on disruption, organizational culture, and leadership. He is an Indian Army veteran who wore the uniform for 4 decades and superannuated in April 2016. During his career, he served in the Jammu and Kashmir state for 10 years and on all the borders multiple times. He commanded an anti-terrorist Rashtriya Rifles battalion in Jammu and Kashmir at the height of terrorism. His battalion was considered one of the most successful anti-terrorist battalions in the entire valley. He was awarded the Sena Medal for Gallantry and the Chief of Army's Commendation twice, both for serving in JNK. He also participated in anti-terrorist operations against Ulfa militants in Assam. As a brigadier, he participated in the first Indo-US exercise at strategic level and was appointed as a mentor on both the US and the Indian brigades. He has also served in Lesotho, Southern Africa as security advisor to the government and leader of Indian Army training team. As a Major General, he held the prestigious appointment of GOC Dakshin Maharashtra with a mandate to run all army establishments, logistics depots, ammunition depots, hospitals and cantonments in 18 districts of Maharashtra. He is an MSc and MPhil in Defense Studies, and he has attended a study program in the US at the Asia Pacific Center of Security Studies, Hawaii. A lifelong learner, he qualified as a lead auditor for occupational health and safety governed by ISO 45001. Major General Neeraj Bali has delivered talks on disruption, organizational culture, competitive intelligence, and leadership on several prestigious forums, including the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, XLRI Jamshedpur, Strategic Competitive Intelligence Professional Summit in the US and Portugal, Institute of Competitive Intelligence Conference at Germany, to name a few. He is an ICF certified life and leadership coach. He is also currently under contract with a leading publishing house to write a book on Army's culture. So it's a privilege to have you on the panel today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Wow, and thank you very much to Achin for giving me yet one more opportunity to come and speak on this forum. The topic of peer counseling both intrigues me and fascinates me, and I'll tell you in a moment why it is so. It is, as you might have picked up from my bio read out by Shubhayu, that I am also a life coach. So I'm pretty much in the thick of understanding and trying to solve or help solve problems of others, which is exactly what counseling is, except that in this case, it is done by the peers, by students for each other. Now, as a life coach, I am always struck by three things, three commonalities that almost stare at me like a pattern when I talk to people with very complex issues of life. The first is that many people believe that their problems are unique and only they are facing these overwhelming challenges. The second pattern that emerges is that a great many people believe that these problems should not be happening to them. They don't deserve it. Somehow, at the back of our heads is the notion that life was meant to be easier, as if happiness is supposed to be a linear equation, and you should be able to lead your life without too many of these big problems. That in itself is a problem. And the third commonality that I observe is that they are alone in solving these issues. And ironically, people who are the least equipped emotionally or sometimes even intellectually to solve their problems are the most shy to come forward and seek help. As you would realize, if you think about it, all these three notions are pretty much kind of divorced from realism. That's not what it is. There is no memorandum of understanding with the good Lord that life will be easy and there would be no challenges. Life is meant to be difficult. Now, I started by saying this because children are no different. When I got invited to speak here, I was reminded of all the way back in, I think, 1962 or 63, when I was in nursery class in a school in Himachal Pradesh and was asked to take part in a fancy dress competition. I was so mortified by the whole idea of coming onto the stage and facing a bunch of adults that I cried and I bawled, and I had to be literally nudged and dragged by my mother and teachers onto the stage and given a consolation prize just to make sure I don't cry any further. Now, many, many years later, as an officer, when I entered the jungles of J&K, where you anticipated that an AK-47 burst will any moment, you'll hear it any moment at night, the anxieties are not very different. I bring out these two different examples to tell you that while as adults, when we look at hindsight, our problems as students and children seem small. But when you are a child yourself and when you're a student, those problems are huge. They're mammoth. It's just that the perspective has shifted. So therefore, the reason I'm highlighting this is that a child's problems, a student's problems, be it to do with his studies or the fact that other people are not being friendly to him or whatever, are as huge, as big, as complex in his mind and as unsolvable as the problems of someone like me. And that is why peer counseling is, among many other things, such a terrific idea. Now, peer counseling is what? It's a relationship. It's a relationship between two, say, students or two peers to help understand the problem of one of them and to try and solve the problem. And why is it more effective or attractive is because both the parties share a common identity, a common experience. If you look back at your days as a student, if you had a problem in school or you were struggling with something, who would you have preferred to approach? An adult or a fellow student? I think the answer should tell you that there is a far greater level of comfort when you want to approach someone like you who probably is struggling with the same problems as you are. Having said that, when I think about peer counseling, I think the issues can be put in two clear buckets. The first bucket is what I call the functional difficulties, the functional challenges, which is a student may be confronted with what stream should he take next? how to fill up forms for which college should he opt for, what kind of co-curricular activity he should do, how can he do better in a debate. All right. So this is one bucket. And the other bucket is the behavioral bucket. The issues of bullying, of ragging, relationship issues between students themselves, and maybe back home, in some cases, violence, domestic violence, and their own performance issues, which they may not be able to share with anybody else. Now, when I think about it, the functional issues, for functional issues, peer counseling would be a very effective medium. It's not the only medium, it's not the only mode. You obviously have to have school counselors. There are teachers, there are parents, there are others, but peer counseling would be very effective when it comes to functional issues. They would be great, for example, for new students who are finding their way about the school and don't really know what to do and how to conduct themselves. So they would be great for the students, they would be helpful for the teachers, and they will certainly be helpful for the parents. And of course, going forward, which college to join, which stream to really opt for, that kind of advice or counseling can be given by senior students quite clearly. And in case of one school whom I spoke to, they encourage their alumni to come back on certain dates and do this counseling, which I think is a tremendously good idea because the alumni have already moved on and themselves joined colleges and so on. And similarly, students facing problems with studies, not being able to understand something, or not being able to perform in co-curricular activities, all this would make tremendous sense if we encourage peer counseling for these activities and really give them a boost, right? Not as a replacement for anything else, but this should be in the forefront. But when it comes to behavioral challenges, I think I have a bunch of doubts. You see, even at adult level, not many of us can handle some of these issues, which are often psychological in nature. As a life coach, I can tell you that there is always a percentage of cases in which I don't make a headway. So therefore, this is something to be done with great care. If at all we choose a few selected peers who are going to help people in things like bullying and psychological issues, relationships, and so on, they must be first trained and they must be remotely supervised, right? The school counselor must be able to keep an eye on which way it is going. What should they be trained in? Some simple things: listening, empathy, not judging, and very importantly, if there are some serious things which are about to happen, something that is going to hurt the child who's being coached, who's being counseled, maybe a violent issue, maybe something else, reporting those issues back to the school counselor or the teacher, depending on whatever the protocol is, and yet maintaining confidentiality with everybody else. Now that is a framework, I think, which probably can work if you select a few good students who can help others for behavioral issues and for getting inputs yourself. Now, obviously, this whole process has challenges. And if I was to just talk about 2 or 3, first is, unless we are very careful, the peer counselor may or may not understand their role. Their role is to listen, to grasp the problem clearly, to ask the right questions, and then to help out with advice. And if there are solutions to be sought, hopefully the solutions should be encouraged from the person being coached himself. So not understanding the role may be a challenge unless people are briefed properly. The second is that if you don't pick the peers carefully, some of them might become negative or pessimistic role model and might join the, if I may use the word, the cribbing session themselves. And third, of course, like I said, lack of life experience makes it a very daunting task for any peer to give advice on relationship issues or issues where a bit of psychology is involved. Having said that, I would end by saying that overall, this is an approach that must be taken. And the reason why I say this must be taken is because it has another latent payoff that, in my mind, supersedes everything else. And that payoff is it's going to build a sense of community among the students as they grow. It will tell every individual that in the battle of life, he or she is not alone. It will tell every student that it should be the part of their growing up and their DNA to help each other and not just to become selfish islands, just taking care of themselves. And I think this would even encourage people to become great team players, because now you're not just thinking for yourself, but you're also thinking of everybody else. I think if we achieve this, then peer counseling, this in itself is reward enough for this whole thing called peer counseling. I once again thank you very much, and I really congratulate Notebook for always coming out with this superb topical contemporary subjects, which I think a lot of people don't even put their hands into. So congratulations to Achin and his team. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, sir. It's an absolute privilege to have you speak about this. We know that a lot of corporates look to retired army officers as senior corporate leaders. And when you speak to us every time, we are reminded why. This kind of incisive understanding of the human psychology is something that you truly develop on the field and on the field alone, and not in many other sectors. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker today is Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. Achin is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CPA Australia and CPA Ireland. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, I can hear you loud and clear. I can't see
once
you.
again, is it better now?
I am not getting on video. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So I think I once again welcome all of you to today's session. Now, more than 10 months, we're discussing about various topics, and I can tell you that over the last 1.5 years, we've been doing this session, especially say around last 1 year, say around last 10 months, we've been very consciously discussing about various topics which we feel are always relevant, But now, considering the challenges that have been brought in by the pandemic, definitely these topics have become far more critical in today's context. Now, mental health, like for once, if we look at the broader perspective of things, take a more holistic view, mental health undoubtedly is a simmering crisis for many of our school children, partly hidden by isolation, but increasingly evident in the distress of parents and the worries of educators during what we have seen in last 1.5 years with schools closed. Holed up at home, students dwell in the glare of computer screens, missing friends and teachers. Many of them are depressed. Some are part of families who are coping with job loss. financial challenges, bills that aren't paid. Others suggest the fallout of the pandemic could be could reverberate far beyond the current time of masks and quarantines. So the fallout, the trickle-down effect, is going to be really long. The students are struggling across the board. This social isolation, loneliness, changes in their routine. And many of them who never had a symptom of any kind of mental health condition before the pandemic now have the symptoms. And experts point out that students can have very different experiences of isolation at home. Some, in fact, are doing better academically, free from social anxieties, peer pressure, distraction, getting more sleep. Some are bonded more with their families, but others are visibly struggling. Kids at times unwilling to get out of bed. Many of them, even during discussion, these things come up. Some of them are very reluctant to lead a normal routine. And at times also a strange withdrawal symptom, withdrawal from families, friends, trying to develop self-harming tendencies. And when we see this world of isolation, wherein children are not going to school, not meeting their friends, not being able to, go out for outdoor activities. More and more, I think a topic like peer counseling becomes so important. We really understand what we are missing out. Of course, in today's age with platforms, social media, online platforms, etc. Of course, it can be done in a different manner, virtually as well. But we do understand what we're missing out. Now, when we hear this term, peer counseling, I remember an article long back in Washington Post, a 1998 article, which very aptly dealt with this term, peer counseling, to counter any notion some kids might have that any kind of formal training in peer counseling will turn them into therapists. Now, what really motivates adolescents is that many don't like revealing their problems to their parents, and which is quite natural. There's the peer effect is like putting in a high-speed computer chip. Anything you want to do with school children, if you leverage peer influence, undoubtedly, it will be faster and better. However, the problem is complex, and so are its effects. Now, well-grounded, sensitive adolescents find that friends often approach them to talk over problems. Now, some of them are very trivial problems, as Bali was discussing. At times, maybe should I focus on football or cricket? But others are obviously painful and potentially dangerous issues, like self-harming tendencies. Might be a student suffering a setback and then withdrawing, trying to develop any kind of self-harming tendencies. So, how should a young listener handle such events? Now, this peer counselor trainings, which is given to teenagers around the world, it really helps because there are some children who are naturally good communicators, and this kind of training acts as a tool they need to become highly effective listeners. And their sharpened listening skills allows their friends to come to them for guidance, a chance to see troublesome issues mirrored back objectively, which helps in making responsible decisions. So this works because it capitalizes on the developmental tasks that drives adolescence. Finding a community among peers while detaching from parents. It transforms what parents typically identify as a major bummer into resource. The propensity of their children to talk only to the peers. Now, well-run peer counseling programs actually gives adults a bridge into the youth world. Now, many authorities agree that it's really harder to grow up unscathed today. Standards seem simultaneously too high and too low. First of all, in spite of all the lip service about the sanctity of childhood, it's a fact that at times consciously or subconsciously, parents put too much of pressure upon their children, burdening them with excessive and inappropriate expectations. As I remember, David Elkin had written in his book, The Hurried Child, that modern culture has pushed children. Modern culture has actually pushed children into a rush of acting grown up before they're ready to be grown up. So what primarily motivates most kids who are drawn to peer counseling is their strong desire to assist people. Because, and also children who are volunteering, they're looked up to by their peers as leaders, role models, as those who are friendly, balanced, accessible, and those who can be trusted. I think the single most important thing. Now, around the globe, typically, peer counselor training consists of elective academic courses, a semester long, and which is given after school. And it's a very formal structure. The course trains them in active, empathetic listening, mediation, and conflict resolution. And also more idea about prevalent teenage issues, maybe trouble at home, depression, at times drugs. Now, peer counselors are taught that their job isn't to solve problems. Now, I think this part is really important, much less to practice therapy. I think the most important part is to listen, fully engaged, with empathy and without judgment. Because this alone goes a long way in order to help. Life can in fact be very confusing to two teenagers. Even if they don't acknowledge it, despite their whatever attitude, deep inside, they think that their experiences should make sense. Now, but when the reality doesn't align with either their own or parental expectations, adolescents can react with acute discomfort. They can become depressed and unfortunately, occasionally even suicidal. Now, a leading student mental health charity in UK called Student Minds promotes the idea of peer intervention. It supports provided by and for people with similar condition, problem or experiences. Because people who faced and overcome adversity, people who have themselves gone through it, can offer support, encouragement, and hope to others facing similar situations. So I was reading about the incident, which I found really, really interesting. Specially able people being counseled by specially able people. Those who have actually faced those similar challenges in life, who are in a position to actually understand what the other person is going through. Because peer supporters are trained to identify and spot problems that require professional help. So they serve as a filter, lowering the strain on formal support services. One of the most common feelings expressed by students with mental health difficulties is loneliness. In 2010, the Mental Health Foundation found it to be a great concern among young people than the elderly. And this is really shocking that more than elderly, the young people are suffering from loneliness, in spite of the fact that they are going out and have a much more active social life. Peer support groups can also connect people who previously thought that they were suffering alone. The approach has been adopted by some universities also. In fact, the University of Glasgow introduced an experimental peer support program a few years ago. This involves students undertaking a 30-hour course that covers areas such as suicide awareness, self-care, crisis intervention. These students can then help their struggling peers, organize events, and offer informal and formal support. Now, the next part which I wanted to discuss, and I found this very interesting, how Germany turns, refugees into mental health counselors for their peers. So I was reading about a project MSF, a project which counters lack of mental health care by helping migrants to teach coping skills and offering asylum seekers a patient listening ear. Now, a pilot project to train refugees as psychological peer counselors, in which the goal is to teach coping skills and stress management, while giving new arrivals someone to talk to about their troubles, because in many cases the troubles are quite similar, quite common. When the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, gave her a "We Can Do It" speech, quite a famous speech a few years ago, the whole nation was instantly charged up. This particular body, MSF, quickly realized there was a huge gap in mental health care, even in wealthy Germany. So many newly arrived refugees suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Like a 2015 estimate by Germany's largest association of psychotherapists indicated up to 40% of refugees had symptoms of depression or anxiety related to the situation back home or their difficult journeys, what they have gone through. Now, left untreated, such disorders can be crippling, costly, and potentially very, very dangerous, because several recent attacks in Germany allegedly involved asylum seekers or refugees with untreated mental health problems. So the peer counseling meetings are very low-key. In Germany, these are very low-key meetings. The peer counselor introduce themselves and ask new arrivals about them, their worries and their journeys. There are also group therapy sessions, which are a very important part of the program, because it's often hard for people to talk about their problems in front of strangers. We all agree. But then seeing other people with the same concern is a huge help. And they have been this MSF is running this program very successfully. Now, coming to various models, first and foremost, independent living model, various models of peer counseling. In order to understand peer counseling fully, if you look at this particular model, independent living model, it's a concept or expression of people's desire to be in control of their own lives. Now, this model can be understood more fully when compared to the other model, which is the rehabilitation model. In the rehabilitation model, to put things very simply, it says that if changes or adjustments are to be made, they happen within the client. Now, the client is expected to internalize, to see his or her own weakness, shortcomings, make changes, and most of all, learn to be accepting of the challenges. The counselor working within the independent living model would look at the problems from outside the client, outside in view. That is, looking at the environment and helping the client determine what in the environment needs to be changed in order to ensure that the client functions more effectively. So, coming to the advantages, undoubtedly we all agree that peer counseling has many advantages. Whether you look at the client who is being counseled, or the counselor, or even the community. Because the whole fact of getting an opportunity to reach out to someone, developing coping skills, is a huge advantage. Again, the other important part is, it's not that all individuals can be good peer counselors. Of course, with training, people can significantly improve, no doubt about it. But good counselor is a person who can show empathy towards other people's problems. Be able to listen, communicate, direct, and to be very direct, sincere, and be able to share personal experiences. And of course, trust is so important. And have the knowledge and skill that would be helpful. So a broad range of personal characteristics, I think, goes a long way in order to ensure that someone is a good peer counselor. Also, I think this rights-bearing attitude is very important of someone whom we really look up to in terms of his or her personal integrity. So undoubtedly, practically, it may not be possible for everyone to approach a professional counselor with ease. Various issues, be it unavailability, at times still, mental inhibitions, etc. Although should not be. So in such cases, peer counseling is so useful. Someone in your immediate circle whom you can reach out to. So be it conflict resolution, building self-confidence, self-esteem, academic difficulties. I think Bali sir mentioned very, very correct. One of the most commonly discussed topics among peers: exam stress, at times adjustment issues, especially say, for example, issues while adjusting to hostel life, ragging, bullying, many more issues. So, of course, approaching a peer counselor can be very, very effective, subject to the fact the other person has the maturity to handle it. So I think these are a few things that I wanted to discuss. Of course, this is a very, very important and interesting topic. And there are various ways of looking at it. We have a very experienced panel here today. And I really look forward to the deliberation on this important topic. Over to you, Shubhai.
Thank you so much, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation on peer counseling. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Achin mentioned, we do have a fantastic panel lined up for you. But before I go on to the panel discussion, a little bit about Notebook. We at Notebook are an EdTech product. We make short videos pertaining to the school curriculum. What this means is that you, as a teacher, will have access to videos that pertain to each and every lesson that you will take in class. You can play these videos either before a class or during a class and have your students develop a visual understanding of what you're going to teach. Well, the students also have access to the same videos on their personal devices at home, be it a smartphone or a laptop, and they can watch these videos as many times as they want. This gives them a great chance to not only revise and catch up on what was being taught, but also serves as a memory aid, because when students watch the videos that you played in class, they get reminded of the exact things that you said. I'm going to play a short segment of one of the Notebook videos today. This video is from the chapter Changing Cultural Traditions.
The figure of the Renaissance men who honed a wide range of interests and skills emerged in Florence. Leonardo da Vinci was one such Renaissance polymath with interest and aptitude in science, arts, architecture, anatomy, engineering, mathematics, music and cartography, etc. Artists in Italy were excited with the material remains of ancient Roman civilizations like works of art. The Renaissance sculptors wanted to learn from the well-proportioned human bodies found in the sculptures of the past and create similar figures. Donatello's lifelike statues were famous in the 15th century. The study of modern physiology also emerged during the Italian Renaissance, and a Belgian professor of medicine at University of Padua, Andreas Vesalius, was the first to dissect the human body. Artists and sculptors associated with medical schools to study human anatomy to make their works more realistic. The painters were equipped with knowledge of geometry, an understanding of perspective and the use of colors to create variations in quality of light in the paintings. They also used oil as medium, which gave the paintings their vibrant colors. The paintings also absorbed Chinese and Persian influences by coming in contact with the Mongols. The aspiration to create a three-dimensional effect in the paintings and depiction of the lifelike figures in art and sculpture tells us that Italian Renaissance was a time of realism in the arts.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you just saw, videos like these make it possible to really simplify complex international themes for young students. If you go and visit our website, www.notebook.school, or our mobile apps, both for Android and iOS, you would find more than 10,000 such videos at your disposal that you can use to teach your students. Moving on to our panel discussion, it is my privilege to introduce the two wonderful panelists that we have with us today. Mr. K.V. Hariharan is a senior management professional with impeccable qualifications and impressive all-round experience across various industries, especially the public sector and education, offering a unique blend of CFO expertise and end-to-end management consulting with customer-oriented, cost-effectiveness-focused expertise. He holds a BSc and MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and is a member of ACA India, FCCA UK, CPA Singapore, and CPA US. He was Group CFO in many large groups across Middle East, South Asia, and Asia Pacific for almost 2 decades and has led many large companies to their success. He is currently the CEO at the Skylark World School in Lucknow. Sir, thank you so much for being here today. It's a privilege to have you. We also have with us Mrs. P. Mary Rajeswari, who holds an MA, an ML, an MLIS, and an MPhil. With 40 years of experience in the field of education, ma'am has worked in CBSE and matric schools, polytechnic colleges, education colleges, engineering college, and arts college. Ma'am, thank you so much for making the time to be with us here today. It's a privilege to have you on the panel as well. Let me now stop the share and I shall switch on my camera so that we can all see each other. A very good evening to both our panelists. Thank you so much for being here today. Good evening, sir. Mr. Hariharan, my first question is to you. In your school particularly, how do you encourage peer counseling?
Yeah. See, I will just like to give a very short background of what I think is the basic fulcrum on which our framework rests upon. Okay. This is a bit historic. In fact, peer counseling is something, a very new word, but it has been in use for, as I know, for several decades. In fact, parents and grandparents look at peer counselors not just as counselors, but they look at them as influencers. For example, my parents and my grandparents will say, "Hey, Hari, get your friends home. I want to see them. Who are your friends? What are their names? What do they do? What are their interests?" And so on and so forth. It is not that they are just being inquisitive, but they know that birds of the same feather flock together, for example. They know that my personality, to some extent, is also going to be influenced by the peers. And that is why their interest in seeing who are my friends, how do I react with them, and what are they doing. That is just a bit of a historical perspective, which really shows that the importance which Indian families, our own families, since time immemorial, they have placed this peer counseling or peer influencing on a very, very high pedestal. They know that, for example, in a 24-hour period, children are home only for probably 16 hours, which is 2/3 of the time. And 16 hours is probably just 50% of the waking time. Whereas the children are spending another 50% of their waking time with peers, with teachers, and in school. So they have a tremendous impact on the psyche and the approach of a student. So to me, peer counseling is, since time immemorial, given a very, very important position. Now, given that important position, it also means that there are certain characteristics which are required for a person to be a peer counselor. I'm just putting it this, I'm just laying the framework for what we are doing in our school. For example, I would like to differentiate the requirements for a counselor, a peer counselor, into two aspects or into two groups. The first group is what I call as the innate nature or the innate qualities of a person. That should actually be the filtering portion, the initial filter, to choose any peer at any level. And that, if you look at it, one is that they have to be amiable, they have to be caring, they have to be having a helping nature. There should be some level of service orientation. I mean, it improves as it goes along. And the feeling for sharing, I think that is very, very key. I can imbibe any amount of things, but if I'm not willing to share that expertise, then it's absolutely no use. So if you have a person with these qualities, only then that person can be a peer counselor at any stage or any level, whether it is a pre-primary stage or even at a college level. So that is a very basic requirement, fundamental requirement. You could say a gatekeeping sort of requirement. The second is all those skills which are secondary but very, very important, but they are all acquired or developed skills. One, for example, if I can just list them out, I think our panel members have already spoken about it. One is understanding, which comes from your knowledge. Second is relate or relating, which is actually taken care of by ensuring that you choose a peer within that age group. For example, you choose a peer within a pre-primary or a primary or a high school. Within that, that takes care of the relating. Third is empathy, empathizing, which is very important, and then being sensitive, and the confidentiality. Confidentiality has a lot to do. I accept that it is on both sides. It is an innate skill as well as an acquired skill. But the honesty portion is something which is innate, but the confidentiality in terms of keeping secrets is something which is acquired. So I'm showing it under an acquired skill. And most important is the listening skill. If you look at communication skills as a whole, listening skills probably accounts for around 60%. If you're able to achieve that well, then the rest of the 40% is just a question of mechanics. So these are the skills which are developed or acquired and developed. And the last one, which is most important at a very higher stage, is the art of leadership and persuasion. If a person does not have persuasive power, he can never ever be a leader. Now, the question is, why do we need to have leaders when we are looking at peer counseling? There is a particular reason for that, because within peer counselors, there are various levels up to which they can be taken to. That is, what is the role they can take up. I'll just list out some of the roles. For example, what we do at the lowest level is a pre-primary. There is the K1, K2, K3, etc. Here, the peer counselor is nothing but a simple buddy. Hey, he's my buddy. Okay, fine. Could be a student who's sitting next to me, but he's a buddy. So they share things. They learn a lot of things. And as they move along, they are able to relate to each other. And because that is a level of learning also, academic learning, which is expected. So that would be a very simple case of a buddy when it comes to your pre-primary. When it comes to your primary, we add two more to that. For example, it can be a lunch buddy. For example, within primary, you have a class 1 student and then a class 3 student. We say, okay, today 1 and 3, okay, you both get together and have lunch. You have lunch like this for 1 month or 2 months. So get to know each other. So we call it as a lunch buddy. The third is actually a class monitor. Here is where a little bit of leadership skills come in. When you say leadership skills, it also means communication skills come. The art of persuasion comes in. And certain other things like empathy, listening, and all those things come in when you're a class monitor. You become a role model and you're always clear that there is a certain way in which I have to behave so that the person whom I am likely influencing will also behave in the same manner. So this would, I would say, within the primary section. When you come to the middle class school, we add two more. One, a peer mediator. You know, small children, they always have some small issues. And if a teacher gets into all these issues, it's not going to be productive. It can be a very simple thing. It can be psychological, but it can just be a question of anxiety and concern. So that can be taken care of the peer mediator who listens to both sides, nods their head and says, okay, but you see, he's saying this, you are saying that, but you know, I think there is a bit of truth in that. Now, I don't mean to say that there's going to be a political thing, but it is essentially trying to develop a certain skill in terms of pacifying and also making different people look at the same situation from different perspectives. And another would be in a middle school, apart from the class monitor, would be the girl guides or the scouts captain. This is very key because again, it builds up discipline here, which you may not have in a class environment as a buddy. Class monitor, girl guides, or this captain, scouts captain, builds up those levels where you are becoming more of an influencer, not just a counselor. Now, when you come to a high school, maybe from 6th standard to 10th or 12th, would say, we add a few more. One is the house monitor. I mean, it is not just for the class, but there is a monitor. We have 4 houses, and we have named it after the 4 Vedas, which is Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharvana Veda. So those 4 houses, we have captains. So that gets added upon, a little broader responsibility and overview. And we also add the sports captain or the games captain, depending upon what sort of thing it is. And then NCC. NCC, I believe, having gone through the program, it is one of the best. It can be NCC or it can even be the olden days, what used to be called as a NSS, National Service Scheme, but we are looking at NCC, that is from out. And then we have the head boy or the head girl for the high school. So this is the level of progression we are looking at that. At the highest level, I would say, if it is in a college, we would certainly add the games captain and then a teacher's assistant. In a way, it is something like a research associate in the in the sort of a research environment or an academic environment. A teacher's assistant who simply takes notes, distributes notes. Before the class is on, the student comes to the board, he'll write down and say, today, this is what is the topic going to be covered, etc. Basically, he's trying to imbibe the characteristics which the teacher is exhibiting and slowly acquire those and internalize those. I think one of the greatest things which we have learned in India, in our culture, is that it is not enough to know, but you have to internalize. And then you have to exhibit out, it has to come out in action. In fact, Rajaji spoke about bhakti in this faction. He said that only when you have internalized knowledge and it comes out as wisdom and it comes out in terms of action, can you really say it is bhakti. This is something which a student, a teacher's assistant can do. A higher level would be the student's council. You know, you have today a small structure with maybe a president or a vice president or council members and so on. That actually helps them to take on a higher plane. A little more difficult is a career counselor. Now, I have put this only in college, but even here I would look at that role as more as an assisting role rather than a counselor. I do realize that because a counselor is a great influencer, it's a great thing, but it cuts both ways. If the person is not capable, as it has already been pointed out by Achin, I think, if the person is not capable, it can create havoc. So that means that a person who doesn't know anything about career cannot go and counsel anybody on a career. He can only show options. And finally, you can have a slightly better form would be a placement counselor in a college environment. For example, even in IMA, at other places, we have this placement counselor, where it is not only the placement counselor from the college side, but also the students' representative. And in IMA, we used to have them as the counselor. They are the one who drives the whole pattern. The placement counselors, I was one. We decide as to how many opportunities had to be given to students who are passing out. At one point in time, how many offers they can hold. Then you put a stop and say, okay, no more interviews for you. You decide among these three, or demand among these four, etc. And what is the scheduling? Because there are many companies who come in and say, I want the first slot. Everybody wants the first slot. Quite understandable. They want to pick the cream. But then you have to decide on certain aspects, looking at what is the requirement of the students for placement also. So given this, what it means is that you can have a very small role as a buddy at the lowest level. And at the highest level, you can have somebody as a placement and a career counselor. But the gradation through which they go through is determined by the skills we have said. They need all these skills. But it is going to be primarily defined by the knowledge they have on that particular role. And secondly, in terms of their maturity level. Now, I'm talking about maturity level as a very loose word. It can be both experience, the art of discernment, what is right, what is wrong. These two are very, very important, where we can determine as to whether they can do that. And finally, it is also a question of age. For example, you can't have somebody doing a placement counseling in a pre-primary or primary. That maturity is just not there. They are not seen enough of the world. It is not just the knowledge. For example, even high school students are many a time are at the crossroads and they are unable to decide what they want to pursue, whether it's engineering or medicine or arts or science or commerce or whatever. So at that point in time, putting them and telling them that you have to counsel, I think it is going to be a disaster, because they are just not equipped. They are not mature enough. So that is what I call broadly as a maturity case. So this is our framework. You would notice that it is based on what are the requirements of that role, and try to put different roles at different levels so that there is a progression for each of these students, which is based on the experience as well as the maturity. So that is our approach. Now, of course, there are some, I'll just take 1 minute if you don't mind, please. There are some challenges which come in because of our online classes. Counseling means that there is interaction. Interaction and communication is not just oral or written. It is also got to do a lot with our body language and the showing of emotions and so on. All things said and done online, there are certain disadvantages in there. There are some drawbacks which we cannot do. Somebody may say yes, but really they may be fidgeting. And somebody may be saying something, but it may not be true, and they are fidgeting, but you can't see it in an online environment. You cannot smell a problem in an online environment. I mean, putting it very, very bluntly. You can hear, you can see, but you cannot smell the problem, and you are not able to get the complete feel because of the lack of body language. It's just a limitation. It's not that it can't be surmounted. You can, if you have enough space and time, etc., you can do that. But that is the only disadvantage I would find in an online environment now, when we are not having the offline classes, or I would call it as the inline classes. It's not an online, but it is an inline classes. And that is how we approach from our school. Some of this is still work in progress, obviously. We are just a K to 12 school. So obviously, I can't do anything with respect to the college and so on. I can't do that. We have begun with the, up to the high school, we have begun in a small way. It is still work in progress. For the simple reason, you have to find the right peer counselors. I am very, very convinced about it. I am very sure that if you make a wrong choice in the beginning, it is going to be chaotic. And in this, I would like to point out that because of the importance this has, the process in which this is implemented should be very, very clear-cut and should be absolutely foolproof. I mean, 99%, 95% or whatever it is. You can't never be perfect, but you can't have somebody who is unsuitable to be a counselor, peer counselor, to put him in that role, simply because saying that, no, we can make him acquire skills. No, innate skills cannot be acquired. I hope this gave you an feel for what is it that we are approaching, the way we are approaching, and what we are doing in our schools. Sir.
Absolutely. Sir, thank you so much for taking us through that process. And I love how you've put a structure to it. From your industry experience, I can see a lot of best practices have flown into the way that this has been done. I mean, a perfect pyramidal structure starting with just one step and then branching out into many, as well as the hierarchical process to it. That was beautiful. Also, sir, if I may just say so, I have also been a place commoner in my B school days.
Oh, great. Yes. Actually,
thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
I'll just get across to Rajeswari ma'am now. Mr.
Yeah.
Rajeswari, if I may come to you with the same question, ma'am. You've had more than 4 decades of teaching experience. What has been your experience in terms of peer counseling? How do you encourage peer counseling? Who do you select as a peer counselor? Ma'am, if you could please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody. The first thing I'd like to thank for this opportunity. It was something wonderful for me. I've gone to so many seminars and all those things, but this webinar is something new for me. Anyway, I've learned the platform and I've come to me. And the topic that is assigned for me to discuss in this panelist is peer counseling. This is a very beautiful topic because many people don't concentrate on, they concentrate only on just studying skill, writing the exams and all those things. But this is something a new and a good topic for the current. Actually, peer counseling means it is one-to-one interaction. We just want to talk to other people. And that means when we are in a school or when we are with a child, this is very, very essential. Because whatever a teacher presents to a child, it does not appeal to them. And another thing, if we are going into the parents and ask them to give counseling, again, it is not possible. And the children are not taking up the counseling or whatever the answers or anything that is given to them. And moreover, those days, when we were all going for school and all those things, at that time, it was a big family, a joint family. So something, at least the child had, they can ask the elder ones at home. But now, with a small family and parents running for the salary need, they are not able to counsel them properly. So whatever a child feels is correct, that is correct. If a child feels it is wrong, it is wrong. So they go on carrying it. Sometimes A right one is also taken as a wrong one. So it all depends on the peer counseling. So when they are with the friends, a peer means it is almost same age group or something they have got in common, maybe the stress or difficulties or issues or adjustments, it can be anything. But when it is of the same group, no, they can share the thoughts very freely. They don't have a shy or ego problem or anything. Even if it is in a classroom, when they are with the teachers are ready to come and give them counsel. They are ready to support them. But children are not ready to take it. They feel it is below dignity, or they are put in a tight corner, they are harassed. And often when they meet the teacher, other students ask, what is the problem? You're not doing well and all that. So the children are not ready to approach. But when it is a peer counseling, when they are with the friends, they are ready to accept what the child says, what is the other child tells. So this is a very good thing. And this happens not only in a middle school or a high school level, it happens from the primary level. I have worked from primary level and I've become a professor. So I have seen all the level of children in my experience. When you go to that child, a child will not have a lunch box.
I think there's a bit of a connectivity issue. Achin, can you just confirm if you can hear?
Open this.
Yeah.
The child is not ready. The child stares and cries and it's not even ready to give the tiffin box or the tiffin bag to them. And when you come to the next level also, if the child is not able to do something or not able to write, immediately it will seek the support of the peer group only. Can you write and give me? Can you help me? Can you solve this? I'm not able to solve this. So there the teacher is always in down. He goes there and tells, do like this, my child, I'll help you. I'm always there for you. But if the teacher voluntarily tells also, the child is not ready to take this up. In my own case, it had happened because I'm not a very good student in math. The math teacher was very good and I still remember her. But what happens is the teacher repeatedly tells me something, do like this is a formula, you have to apply and all this, but nothing will get in. But if the same thing, a friend of mine who was always sitting at the back of me comes and helps, no, I feel everything is clear. So that girl will always, she will go on her own. No
I think there's a bit of a network issue. Or is it at my end? Can somebody please confirm that?
Yeah, there's a little bit of network issues. You're right.
And then when I was working in a polytechnic, again, this same problem happened. What is it there? The children think when they come to polytechnic, it is a college level. So immediately they wanted to behave like a college student. They did not know they are still in the school level, almost just a senior grade level only. But they wanted to behave like a college student. When we tell them, don't do this, don't do that, they were not ready to listen. They didn't understand. And main thing, language is a barrier for them. People from Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, all people were coming to this college. So communication was a very big problem to them. They were not able to understand what. So if they are put in the same group, they were able to understand. And then any difficulties among them in communicating to the teachers or anything, the students were ready to help when it was among the group. And when I came to college, that was another thing. It was about the career. A child wanted to become a chartered accountant, but the parents said, you have to work long, you have to do studious work and all those things. It will take a long time. You cannot earn very soon. So you have to go to engineering. And after coming to engineering also, the child was not allowed to choose a topic, that is the course. The child was very good in automobiles. You name a car, the child will be telling this is there, that is there, in this car, this is possible, this rate is there, this is fixed. All data he was having in his hand. But the parents forced him to go in for computer because they say in future only computer has place, other people will be discarded. So the child was not ready to be attentive in the class also. Again, it was only the peer group, his friend, who was able to motivate him, guide him, and all those things. For this, what is essential? Listen patiently. And when they listen patiently also, they have to be very active. They have to put questions. They must again paraphrase what is happening, how Is it correct? Is it what your expectation? Are you coming to tell me the same thing? And when this detail is there only, they will be able to come out with a communication. And when you're going to communicate also, we cannot boss over them. You know, no, you have to do it. We have to put ourselves in the shoe. We have to empathize with them and then come out. Okay, this is like this. If you're very kind, very soft and handling them only, you will be able to solve the problem. So here, assertiveness is also essential. That is, you have to pursue them indirectly, not bossing over them. And when we go to the other end, what are the other characteristics that is very essential for this peer counseling is, there are so many problems with especially when you are in the adolescent, the children will have a lot of problem. That is, you cannot tell out a female child has a different problem and a male child has different problem. So this type of talk, they cannot have it with the parents and they cannot have with the teachers. So it is a other peer group member with whom they can discuss and come out. When they are not given time for this, it is at this time they turn and they take a different path. They become what to say, a robber or some again antisocial element or something like that. So this peer counseling is very, very essential among our students. This has to be cultivated. And it is not under the teacher's direct influence. If you are going to influence under the teacher, the child will not mix with that child. The child will feel disgusted, the child will feel shy, the child will not be ready to move with them and conform with the problems. So we should allow the other child to move freely with a problematic child or any child who encounters a problem. And then afterwards, when we are free, we can ask them, okay, what is the problem you were both discussing there? What is it going on like that? When you can have a separate interaction with these things, we can find out the problems and we can find out what are the solution given to the child with the problem. And then we can motivate this child. No, I think this may not be good. This may be helpful when you're coming. And all these things, if you say, they will be happy and they will go and communicate the same thing. But this communication should never be revealed that it is from a teacher. If the child comes to know it is from a teacher, the child will not be ready to take up the decision. The child will even leave this child and move to some other group. And that group may be the wrong group. Or even in this case, the child would have given a wrong information or a wrong guidance. So only when we are showing our personal care into it, we can find out whether it is a right thing or the wrong thing that is being sent to the child. And then we have to follow certain techniques like questioning them, and we should not have a direct question forcing them. We should just enforce them, ask them, give them an open question, not yes or no question. Yes or no questions are not going to help anyway. So we should give an open question to them, and then we should ask the child or find the child. Whenever we are free, we can call them and give them how to paraphrase that. That is, we have to repeat once whatever we collect, and we have to ask them whether this is okay. When you say this is okay, yeah, can I continue? Am I right in understanding the schedule? Only then we'll be able to go with this. So this kind of things are going to help a child. And counseling, peer counseling is very, very essential when they come to a college level. They do not know how to choose a group, or they do not know how to make a choice of the college or the job, opportunities of a job, something like that. I know my own daughter, she was not willing to go to a college where it was offered a free course also. They said you can go free of cost, you can do all the, but the child had influence of the peer. So she wanted to go to another college, though it was very costly one and all those things. So here also it is the influence of the peer that had motivated her to go to a different college. And that college seemed to be good. So the parents must also find some time to have talk with children. The parents are now busy going to the job and they come back late, and then they go with the dinner and other things. They are not able to concentrate towards the child. So some sort of parents counseling, peer counseling is good, but some sort of parents counseling is also required for the child. And when you come across this kind of problems, it is where so many hindrances are coming nowadays, especially the online class and the pandemic situation. What happens here? The child is not able to interact with another child. and parents are not able to sit with the child because they have work from home or some other course for them. So at that time, if they come to the school and they can have friendship, talk to them, they can discuss and they get relieved of the stress. But now it is not possible. The children are fully stressed. And I have heard that it is going to be a hazardous problem for the future child. So peer counseling is good, and this will be okay with their online. And in offline also, teachers can give some time after the class, just 5 minutes or something, to interact with the children. You can all discuss children, and she can be out, that is, she can mute herself and come out of that audio and video, so that children can discuss for some time. Now, this is not happening in the online classes. The teachers are there till the end, and child is not able to discuss anything freely. And after that 5 minutes break, a teacher can come back, and then they can have the last minute assignment and everything, and then they can have a disbursement. So I think this would have been a very good choice for the children if they could come across this and know it. Thank you for the
Wonderful.
opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think a special slot, a teacher-less slot in every online class might be a great way to encourage more peer counseling. Thank you so much for that. To
Thank you.
both our panelists, it's been fantastic hearing your views about peer counseling. Well, it is now time for me to move on and introduce our last and final speaker. Before I introduce Mr. Burrett, here's my take on peer counseling. When I was growing up in school, obviously, you discuss everything with your friends. But it is very good. I went to college and was in a residential course for the first time. I realized what importance peer counseling had, which is why Mr. Bharat's inputs are going to be so important, given his extensive experience with the residential course. Mr. Philip Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. He served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Activities, Dean of Student Welfare, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. He also qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist, and we at Notebook are privileged to have him as our senior advisor. Sir, privileged to have you here. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bayu. I hope I'm audible, visible.
Perfectly, sir.
Good evening to all of you, and I want to wish all those teachers out there a very happy Teachers' Day in anticipation. Yes, to take up what Bayu just mentioned, I want to just talk to you about the mentorship that we had at the Doon School. When a new boy joined school, he was given a buddy. We didn't call them buddies; we called them guardians. In fact, the guardians were picked from 1 year senior to these new boys, and they actually wrote a letter to the new boys before they joined school, offering their help and telling them, writing a welcoming letter to school and telling them that they would meet them at the gates when they came and they were looking forward to them. And these little guardians who were in, let's say, class 8, stayed with these new boys for a good 2 months, telling them so many things. When you live in a residential school, which is 80 acres in size, it's ominous, it's scary. And these little boys learned so much about the school. You don't need a rule book. No one had the time to read a rule book, but all the rules, regulations, all the routines, the rhythm, the traditions, the cheerings of, the cheering slogans, the lingo, the do's and the don'ts, where teachers lived, which teachers to avoid, which teachers to go to, which teachers served the best Maggie noodles, everything they learned from their peers. And then it was a tradition in school, built into the DNA, that once they came to the main house, and we had 5 main houses, the senior boys would devote a lot of their time to actually guide and mentor these juniors. Yes, there were some of them who led them in the wrong direction, led them up the garden path. And that's why it's very important that not everyone can be a student mentor. A student leader, a student mentor, a student peer has to be somebody who's got his feet on the ground, who is emotionally stable, who has a clean record. And it was these people, more than the bounders, who were a great help to the housemaster and the teachers. I don't think we could have survived without the help of these senior boys. They taught these kids everything, from the games they played, the tactics, to their studies, to their, how to do their beds, how to iron a blazer, how to wish teachers, how to serve people at the head of table, when to be quiet, when to talk, how to clap. Everything was taught by these seniors. And that's why when laptops came into our lives in school and they got busy with their laptops and their movies and their college applications, a lot of this peer mentoring actually disappeared. And it took away with it the very heart and soul of what the Doon School was about. And this peer mentoring actually goes on even after the boys leave school. They will still look up to their guardian who was 1 year senior for advice. And this mentorship is not only confined to students. This mentorship is also for teachers. So I used to be a mentor to the young teachers. They would be assigned, 1 or 2 young teachers would be assigned to me or to another senior member. And we would stay with this person for 6 months, not only giving him the diary and the books and the routine and the timetables, but also taking him to the geography of the house. I took my tutors to every nook and corner where boys would hide things and what would they hide and where would they jump the wall and which shops they would go to. Everything was mentored by the senior teacher, just as I was mentored when I joined school by my seniors. And they gave me things, you'll do football from next year and you'll do IAYP from next year and you'll teach this from next year. You will dress like this. So we learned a lot from the people who were seniors to us. And I think in schools, there are 2 types of mentorship. We all learn from people who are little senior to us because we are their age group. We can share our secrets with them. We are not scared of them breaching rules of confidence. But the problem with having a peer mentor is they're only 1 year older than you. Now, I often tell students, what can a 16-year-old teach a 15-year-old? What has he seen of life? So while there's a certain advantage in peer mentorship, I think it's also important to have senior adult mentors, because you can't learn everything from a boy 1 year senior. Yes, it's very helpful. It's they tell, as the previous speaker, Mrs. Mary Rajeswari very correctly said, a lot of mentoring goes on into careers. We had a boy in school who was hell-bent on joining a certain college in the US, but he was told by a boy 1 year his senior who had gone to college and said, it's a beautiful college, it has a lovely course, but you'll find a lot of racism there. It's not a very friendly person for Asians. And he was rightly advised, and he changed his college. Finally, he changed. I think he went to the college and he found that it was a very harsh place to be in. And so he changed colleges. So we can learn a lot from people who are older than us, who trod the path ahead of us. And that's why we used to call in boys who just left school to come and talk to our students, because they could tell them much more about college than our own college career counseling team, because they hadn't been to college in America. They knew the theory of it. They knew how to fill in the application forms. But yes, I do say that there's a lot of things that young students want senior students to help them with. For example, conflict resolution. Boys sometimes don't get along with every boy, or even girls. They need their self-confidence boosted. And what better than a senior house captain telling a junior, you played a wonderful game. You showed creativity. Your art is fantastic. I want you to do this. You'll be doing the posters for the inter-house one-act play. Sometimes a clever math student will help a junior with his academics. There are sometimes problems with teachers, especially in residential schools. And that's where peer mentoring would come in. Sometimes to just how to adjust to hostile life. How to adjust to hostile life is not easy. Ragging and bullying, how to cope with it, how to protect against it. So a lot of a lot of wonderful things happen when you are helped by people 1 year older. I remember my school days while my dad was in the army, but I didn't learn too much from officers' sons. I learned a lot from the dhobi's kid. I learned a lot from the the washermen and the cook's kids. I learned all about making a catapult, and I learned about hunting, and I learned about snakes, and I learned about bees' hives, and I learned all the facts of life, not from my school-going peers, but from people who may have not gone to school. And my father never interfered with who I played with. In fact, I learned more football and sport, fishing, how to hook a fish and how to bait a hook with a worm, how to dig for worms, everything about which birds make a noise and how to get, collect eggs and feathers from people who'd never been to school. And so that's what I want to, say. The Doon School, of course, is totally built on student mentorship. At night, when you walk around the houses, you'll see senior boys teaching the juniors how to take part in the dance competition. The choir will be on, the one-act plays will be on, work for Founders Day will be on, and there will not be a single adult around. There's no teachers around. They're all being done by their boys 1 year older, 2 years older. So with that, Shabayu, if there are any questions that you have on your mind, I could answer. I'm just shooting off from the hip today. I hand this back to you.
Thank you so much, sir. With your kind of experience, you shoot from the hip better than most, Olympians would do. There's a question saying, what are the pros and cons of peer counseling? What is the role of educators in this context? I know you've touched upon that, but if you could elaborate.
Yeah, again, there are some people I know there's a establishment in Pune, which is actually coming into schools and training peer mentors, basically against bullying and drug abuse. But they take them through a course. This elder comes in and takes them through a course. So they actually train for it. And they're not called monitors. I mean, you have monitors and school captains and school leaders, but these are special mentors. They wear a badge and they take their job very seriously because they've actually been trained how to listen and how to help. Sometimes the help may not come in terms of advice, but it will come in terms of where to go for advice. Which teacher can I take you to? You're finding a problem in this, I'll take you to the right person. It's so there are, I think it's important to train the real student mentors in how to listen and what to do. And they have to be very mature. Not every student, as I said earlier, can be a student mentor. Just like every teacher can't be a good mentor. There were some teachers where I was, where school teachers, students never went to them. I mean, they would teach and that's it. But when it came to advice on facts of life or problems with girls or any of these issues that boys struggle with, there would be people they would avoid. And there'd be people who they'd go to naturally. People who were non-judgmental, people who didn't fix the problem, people who didn't listen to them, people who gave them, actually debated with them and evolved the answer from within them. Because I think every human being has his own innate ability to solve his problems, So that's what I have to say.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Well, before I bring Achin on for the official vote of thanks, here's wishing every teacher out here a very, very happy Teachers' Day, which is tomorrow, in advance. Achin, we've had some fantastic sessions today. We will have a lot to thank for. So I'll ask you to do the vote of thanks now. Over to you.
Yeah, really a wonderful session, I must say. So first of all, I wish all of you a very happy Teachers' Day.
Thank you.
And best of health, wealth, and happiness. When I speak to senior educators like all of you, I genuinely feel that as architects of a better tomorrow, the kind of contribution you have in nation building, which is phenomenal. So I really hope that schools reopen soon. And, so I think all the best for that. And we had a great session today. I think a fantastic start by General Bali. So I think Bali sir gave us a great overview with a very balanced view and great understanding of human psychology. I think that's something that comes with his kind of experience of so many years as a soldier and as well as a life coach. So I think really phenomenal. Burrett sir, thank you so much for your remarks. I think really wonderful. The way you shared your experience, and you really brought life to the topic, I must say. Be it example with regard to Doon school, this term of guardian, and that to someone who's just 1 year senior. And the best part of it is, I really like the fact that even after school, even post school years, this they're in touch and they look up to their advice. Someone who is just 1 year senior, that goes on to explain the kind of strength in the bond, in the relationship. It's really great, something to really learn from and imbibe. So wonderful, sir. Thank you so much for sharing this. And also, I think, thank you so much for sharing about your childhood as well. And I think very well said that at times, yes, some of the most important things in life, we learn from various sources. So children whom we have played with, etc. And these are so important, because education is something which is not confined to our textbooks naturally. So I think really great. Hariharan sir, thank you so much for being a part of the panel, for gracing the platform. I really like the way you explained the whole topic, level wise, with various nomenclature, traits. That goes on to show the depth of your own, experience that we can see from your profile, wealth of experience, corporate experience, working around the globe. That really came in with the way you are explaining that the entire from pre-primary to going on to career counseling in B school. And the various stages, and at each stage, at each age, the kind of bonding, responsibilities, the challenges, I think really overall, very nicely explained. Thank you so much. Thank you. Rajeswari ma'am, thank you so much for your time. I think, ma'am, I think one very important point you made, which I completely agree with, and I'm sure all senior educators in this forum would agree with you, that we've really moved on as a society from joint family support, joint family system, when a child had so much of support, be it extended family, uncles, aunts, cousin brothers, sisters, so much of support within the family. And from that to nuclear families with working parents, which of course we cannot deny that's something that we all live with. But if you look at things from a child's perspective, yes, at times the child is completely left on his own to decide for himself. And I think that is where the role of peer counseling really comes in really very important. And I think some great questions also you are discussing, and some very thought-provoking questions, which really I think we all need to think through. So overall, great session. I thank all of you for being a part of this. Also, I thank members of the audience for their time here today evening. Thank you. Thank you. Take care and good night.
Thank you, Achin, and a very happy Teachers' Day to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.